Surfing stands as a beloved sport and pastime, embraced by enthusiasts worldwide. Yet, amid the thrill of riding the waves, there lurks a sobering reality. Sharks. These fierce predators of the ocean occasionally mistake surfers for their natural prey, which sometimes result in deadly and horrific attacks. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. In today's episode, we go over 3 times surfers were attacked and killed by sharks. Welcome to Final Affliction. The numerous beaches situated on the Pacific coast of El Salvador offer exceptional surfing for a wide range of abilities. This was something which drew people into the sea from far and wide, and still does today. It was the 17th of September, 1993, a fateful day, not forgotten by any of those who knew the 2 youngsters involved. Oscar Mauricio Guzman Castaneda headed to the water just south of El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. He had driven the 20 miles outside the busy city to one of the best surfing spots in the region, El Cocal Beach, situated on the Pacific coast. The volcanic sands and rocky seafloor of this beach are more suited to surfers than to bathers. Sculpted by the flow of a small river into the sea, one of the distinguishing features of Cocal Beach is its consistent surf. At certain times of the year, these waves can reach 10 feet high, and at other times they are much smaller. This makes it a popular destination for both experienced and beginner surfers. Visitors flock to the beach to enjoy surfing in a usually safe and exhilarating environment. But it's not always a safe environment for those who take to the water. Entering the sea always comes with its risks, but those risks are often pushed to the back of one's mind when enjoying nature at its very best. Taking to the water on his surfboard, Oscar paddled out beyond the breakers. As he sat on his board, bobbing up and down on the surface of the ocean, he was unaware of what swam beneath him. He caught wave after wave, gliding effortlessly towards the shore before paddling back out again. But below him, a great white shark was swimming closer. It was bold and brazen. It had tasted human blood before and was back for more. Only a month earlier, 2 oyster fishermen had been snatched from their small fishing boat by a great white in the same area. A fruitless search to find the fisherman's killer had ended with no catch. Instead, the shark was free to attack again. Maybe the attack on the 2 men had been a freak incident. At least that's what the locals hoped. Sadly, this was not to be the case. The shark knew how to hunt people. It knew that they were easy prey. They were slow in comparison to its typical prey of fish and seals. This opportunistic hunter homed in on the surfers at El Cocal Beach. It was drawn to the coastline by the sounds from those enjoying the warm waters. It was scouring the ocean for a meal. Then it locked its eyes onto the silhouetted outline of Oscar's surfboard. From that moment on, its natural instinct took over, and the shark was in attack mode. With no warning, the shark torpedoed upwards through the water column. It struck Oscar's surfboard and sent him toppling into the water. As Oscar grappled with the board, kicking his legs, trying to get back on, the shark came at him again. It bit into his legs, tugging him underwater, but Oscar fought back. The attack continued. Each time as the shark readjusted its grip on Oscar, it bit down again. The sea turned red. The water bubbled and boiled around him. The shark's snout protruded above the waterline, its teeth on display, its huge head a terrifying sight for the young surfer as he clung onto life. Oscar screamed for help, but none came. His legs were torn to shreds. His arms had been sliced from the sharp serrated teeth. The shark shook him powerfully from side to side, knocking the air from the 17-year-old's lungs. But then the shark left. Oscar grew weak. From loss of blood, he lost consciousness. Tragically, the youngster drowned alone in the surf. He was pulled ashore, but it was too late. He had suffered 7 shark bites across his arms and legs. They were deep wounds that were likely to be fatal, but drowning was determined to be the cause of his death. It is terrible to think that Oscar hit the water that day to do something he enjoyed and would have been looking forward to. He had no idea that he had ridden his last wave when the shark struck. Had it been a case of mistaken identity, or did this shark know exactly what it was doing? That wasn't the only incident to happen that day. There was more to come. It seems this shark was on the warpath, and after attacking and killing Oscar, it headed eastwards along the El Salvador coastline. Just 3 miles away, another young surfer was hitting the waves. This time it was Jose Dita Roque, a 15-year-old who was surfing at La Paz Beach. This beach is a hot spot for locals. Less well known to foreign tourists, the beach is made up of black volcanic rock and sand. It also offers some of the best surf around, which is why Jose hit the water that day. An hour after the fatal attack on Oscar, the shark struck again. Jose was targeted as he sat on his surfboard just off the shore. He felt a sudden knock as something solid hit his board. He didn't immediately recognize it as a shark until he was pulled from his board. His left leg was in the jaws of a 12-foot great white shark. It bit down hard, clamping down on Jose's leg, crushing it between its jaws. He thought his leg was going to snap clean off, and just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, the shark released its grip and let go. Frantically pushing away from the animal, Jose managed to climb back on his surfboard. He cried out to other bathers nearby and they rushed to his aid. He body surfed the next wave in and made it to the shallows. From there, he was helped to shore. Unlike Oscar, Jose received help almost immediately. His left leg had a deep and severe gash in it. Beachgoers tried to stem the bleeding. He was rushed to hospital within minutes of the attack, something which almost certainly saved his life. He had lost a lot of blood, and at the time of the incident being reported, it was uncertain whether he would lose his leg or not. After the terrifying attacks, local fishermen took to their boats to hunt for the shark. They scoured the coastline searching for the alleged 12-footer. It is not known whether they caught a shark during their search, as there were no reports. If they did, however, they couldn't guarantee it to be the right one. Since records began, there have only been 5 known shark attacks off El Salvador's coast. 3 of these have been fatal, the 2 fishermen and Oscar, which occurred within a month of each other. It is unclear why the shark responsible for the El Salvador attacks targeted the 2 young surfers. Experts often talk of mistaken identity. It's easy to see why. A surfer floating on a surfboard at the surface could look like a seal or sea lion from the depths, but this shark attacked twice within the same vicinity. It didn't seem to learn from its mistake. However, the shark didn't take off with Oscar's body. Maybe he had put up too much of a fight and the shark gave up. Or maybe the shark realized too late that this was not its usual prey. They are intelligent animals with incredibly acute senses. Could this shark have deliberately been targeting humans? Was it the same shark that was responsible for the fisherman's death as well as Oscar's? There may be many theories, but in the end, we will never know for sure.
The sun decided it was too shy for today as it hid behind the gray clouds looming over California. Many were bothered by the overcast weather. There were not many souls that ventured to the coastlines of the beach-clad state. However, enthusiasts and surfers wanted to take advantage of the storm swell caused by the cold, windy weather. Louis Archer Boren woke up to his alarm. Although most people would sleep off Saturday mornings, the curly-haired adventure seeker had always been fond of the ocean, and the ocean welcomed him. He planned on surfing the waves of South Moss Beach with a friend, expecting it to be just another typical day. He quickly got up from bed, ate breakfast, and said goodbye to his parents. He got out into the driveway and strapped his 5-foot 4-inch surfboard on the roof rack of his car. The board was colored yellow and had a black bordered by the edges. Coupled with the surfer's hands stretched wide while lying on the board, the silhouette from under the ocean eerily looked like a seal. However, this was not in Louis's mind at the time. He beamed like a child as he maneuvered the car out of the residence. Unbeknownst to him, this would be his last goodbye. He drove carefully, reaching South Moss Beach still early in the morning before the rendezvous time. The smell of the ocean permeated the air, promising Lewis another excellent surfing session. Since 1899, there have been 6 fatal attacks from sharks in California, 5 of them from great white sharks. Although this pattern would easily send chills down anyone's spine and make them warier of entering the waters, fatal attacks from sharks are not really that frequent. Additionally, surfers know precisely the risk they're putting themselves in while practicing their sport. Unfortunately, Lewis never knew he would be the victim of one such brutal attack. Inhaling the sea breeze, the two friends stood patiently on the coastline, peering across the lonely, turbulent sea of South Moss Beach. The two looked out over the greasy, damp kelp beds underneath the gloomy sky. It floated in large, silent rafts colored brown as though serpents were churning beneath them. The waves were blown out on the reef, scaling up to 15 feet high, driven by the cold winds that day. Not a single soul was riding the waves. How could they not take advantage of this, Lewis and his friend thought. The two men pulled on their wetsuits, laughing and talking, catching up as friends would do. They paced along the coastline for a while, stalking the opportunity and getting a general feel of the atmosphere. Lewis and his friend were experienced anyway and didn't share the fear non-surfers felt. The ocean was their home. The two entered the cold waters and paddled out into the open. Floating on the surface, they sat on their boards, waiting for the perfect opportunity. When the winds favored their request, they lay down on their stomachs, pointing their toes towards the surfboard's tail and paralleled their heads to the stringer. They paddled slowly and then quickly, sighting the incoming waves from their periphery. In almost perfect synchronicity, the two young men placed their hands underneath their shoulders, prepping for the exhilarating moment. As the wave warmly welcomed the two surfers, they pushed against their boards, propping their torsos like cobras, and in one fluid motion, Lewis and his friend jumped to their knees. They took a couple of waves in this position, feeling the balance of the board, something they had done 1,000 times already, not realizing a sinister force was brewing underneath the surface. They did this over and over until morning faded into the afternoon. Eventually, it was time to go. Afterward, they returned to the parking area and enjoyed their lunch, talking about surfing, life, and family and other things that young men in their 20s spoke about. At approximately 2 p.m., Lewis and his friends parted ways, not realizing this was the last time they'd see each other. As Lewis made his way back into the car, he felt an urge in his chest. He dazedly stood beside his car with a half-hearted stance, thinking it would be such a waste to let the beautiful waves go. He bathed in the deserted scenery and decided to hit the waters one more time. Just another short session and then he'd go home. Or so he thought. Lewis made his way back to the beach, pacing along the coastline and trying to get a feel for things once more. This time, he was truly alone. However, it didn't matter to Lewis. The storm swell did not happen every day, and he wanted to take advantage of the great waves. He donned his wetsuit and began paddling into the open waters. The sound of the churning ocean filled the air, and a dreading atmosphere washed over Lewis. From underneath him, a fearsome creature watched. The great white shark tilted its head, moving a few meters swiftly under Lewis. The 24-year-old paddled and paddled, unwittingly swimming towards his demise. The fish around the area scrambled in fear, making way for the king. The shark appeared from the shadows, rearing its formidable head into the light. But Lewis did not see the creature. The gloomy weather ensured anything a few meters below him would stay where they were, in the dark, out of sight and out of mind. It moved like a submarine, precise, deadly, and cautious. The 400 million years of evolution taught it to become almost invisible in the ocean, following the movements of its prey. The great white shark followed Lewis. Still unknown of the danger, Lewis's fate was sealed at that very moment. Placing itself strategically a few feet below the surfboard, the great white shark suddenly went into gear, propelling 2,000 pounds of brute force towards the surface. The water exploded into chaos. The creature's massive jaws, laced with 5 rows of teeth, clamped onto Lewis as he paddled away at the water. It was like a train had struck him. The immense force knocked Lewis back from his surfboard, causing him to sink into the depths of the ocean. The single curious bite removed a portion of Lewis's left chest. Before he knew and understood what was happening, he was already dying. Lewis faded into the depths, instantly succumbing to his injury. The water drew its curtains, hiding the horror underneath it, and just like that, the eerie silence of South Moss Beach swept away the tragic fate of Louis Archer Boren. December 20th, 1981, the following day. Two surfers were walking along Moss Beach when they discovered a surfboard with a portion missing in the matching section about 15 yards away. The two surfers took these parts and handed them over to Salinas Police Department. Eventually, they passed it on to the supervising ranger at the beach. Monday, December 21st, a missing persons report was filed by one of Lewis's friends over concerns that his vehicle had not been moved from the beach since he was last seen. They feared the worst, and they were asking the same question: where was Louis? Their answer was swept by the cold currents on the morning of Thursday, December 22nd. Around 11 a.m., Lewis's remains floated in a small cove approximately 1 kilometer north of Spanish Bay. After being taken to the Paul Mortuary in Pacific Grove, it was identified as Louis. An autopsy was done. Severe trauma, left chest, shark bite. Louis was bitten only once. Subsequent investigations of the bite marks revealed something even more sinister. Based on the segment chopped from the surfboard, a marine biologist concluded that the shark's jaws were 18 inches wide. This indicated the shark's length was more or less 23 feet, weighing 2 tons. They had no doubt it was a great white shark, and the largest ever documented. In all metrics, Louis was no match. According to experts, sharks do not attack people purposely, as they don't consider humans part of their food source. In Lewis's case, it was more likely an exploratory bite, and unfortunately, the behemoth shark was never seen again. Humans have remained on top of the food chain for the longest time. Thanks to their highly sophisticated language, coordination, and innovation, humanity has managed to control the environment to their liking, turning their surroundings into what would benefit the population best. However, we must all remember the ocean is one of the few remaining places we have yet to fully explore, and those who aren't careful enough are in for a rude awakening. Whether a shark attacks you because of mistaken identity or out of pure hunger, when a shark attacks, there's a high possibility of you meeting your final affliction.
Most experts agree that great white shark attacks rarely occur. However, it's often a violent and gruesome scene when they do. After all, the great white shark is one of evolution's success stories, with 7 rows of razor-sharp teeth and a powerful bite that can tear almost any sea creature in half. These creatures are one of the most formidable ocean predators. Once you enter their territory, it's essential to recognize the danger of being around such an incredible hunter. In one unfortunate instance, on July 17, 2000, a surfer by the name of Shannon Ainsley was in the middle of a session when not one but 2 great white sharks went after him, an event so rare that if it wasn't recorded on camera, it would be hard to believe. 15-year-old Shannon Ainsley just finished the first day of school after a nice long winter break, and like most days, he was ready to surf. At such a young age, Shannon became incredibly passionate about surfing. He only wanted to hit the waves and practice his newfound love. However, school would lessen his time in the ocean, making him all the more eager to go surfing that day. 2 years ago, their father dropped Shannon and his older brother off at the Nahoon Beach in East London, South Africa. He remembered it was 7 a.m., and their dad only gave them bread, bananas, and a surfboard. With nothing else to do, Shannon decided to try his luck at this new and exciting activity. Upon hitting the waves, Shannon and his older brother immediately fell in love. They became almost addicted to surfing, riding the variety of excellent and powerful waves around the coast of East London. Now he was 15, and that was all he wanted to do. It was a warm winter's day on July 17th, and Shannon planned on surfing the waves of Nahoon Reef, one of the area's most popular surfing and swimming spots. Upon arriving, Shannon grabbed his surfboard and went to the shores of the beach. He gazed at the churning waves in the distance and began to run through his mental checklist of prerequisites in surfing. Even though the reef was famous among surfers, Shannon didn't want to take a chance surfing in bad conditions. After all, it was also filled with sharks. He gazed at the slightly cloudy sky, eyeing if enough sunlight was peering through the overcast. There were no birds around the area, nor was there a strong fishy smell in the air. All were good indicators. The waves were perfect on that warm winter's day, as they were just overhead high and there was very little wind. It seemed like a very good day to be out surfing. Shannon tested the waters a few feet away from the shore. It was warm, even for winter conditions. Today was just too perfect. Shannon couldn't resist the urge to surf. Heading into the waters, Shannon began paddling away further from the shore to meet the waves. He floated on the water's surface while waiting for the ideal timing. Eventually, the wind came in his favor. He pushed against his board, raising his torso up as the wave welcomed him. Meanwhile, his brother and their friends were doing the same thing a few yards away. Shannon took off. For a moment, he was carefree and unstoppable, unaware that a dangerous force was brewing beneath the surface. He continued riding the waves just like this over and over. After an hour and a half, something changed. Shannon's brother and their friends were riding waves. However, they suddenly caught the slightest whiff of sardines. This made them uneasy, prompting them to leave the water. After all, they believed the scent could attract sharks. While Shannon caught a whiff of the sardines himself, he didn't want to stop the surfing session. Instead, he stayed in the water with the rest of the surfers and waited for another wave. As he paddled along, Shannon caught another big wave. He was preparing to hit it, but suddenly something terrible happened. From his left, a large great white shark closed in and burst through the water, colliding with Shannon's board. With speeds reaching 19 kilometers per hour, the shark's impact against Shannon's board was incredible. This immediately took him off balance from the board and sent him flying a few feet in the air. As Shannon flew into the air, he crashed into the wave and immediately met the marauding beast. The shark welcomed him with jaws wide open, biting his left hand and surfboard, then dragging him underwater. It wasn't until this point when Shannon realized that he was being attacked by a powerful predator. Thanks to the shock of the encounter, the shark's bite was numbed, and Shannon couldn't feel anything. While the intrusive predator was dragging Shannon deeper underwater, another massive great white shark was sizing him up, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Speeding toward the commotion, the shark swiped for Shannon's head and shoulders. However, it missed because the other shark already had him by the hand. Unexpectedly, the second shark's presence must have done something to the first shark. The beast slowly loosened its grip on Shannon's hand after encountering the second great white shark. Shannon started to see things slow down. He thought he was in a dream. Unfortunately, the excruciating pain that was now kicking in bolted him back to reality. And just as he regained composure, Shannon found himself staring 2 feet away from a shark face to face. For a few seconds, the creature's beady eyes stared at Shannon as if it was in awe. Shannon could see the rows of teeth inside the creature's jaws. That was how close he was to the great white shark. Strangely, the creature didn't bother him. It swam away, brushing along his back and never appearing again. Regaining his composure, Shannon quickly swam to the surface and found his surfboard. A chunk of the board was missing. All it had was the bite mark of a large great white shark. Shannon climbed onto his surfboard, but then he was shocked to see that his right hand was barely hanging off from his forearm. His hand had puncture wounds, and he could see his wrist bones sticking out. Shannon was about 100 meters out at sea while bleeding, and all he could think about was getting back to shore. With the amount of blood in the water, his biggest fear was more sharks being attracted to the area to finish him off. Due to his injuries, the only way he could get back to shore was to wait for another wave. For the next 20 minutes, Shannon slowly paddled toward the shore, waiting for a wave that never came. He eventually made it to dry land and called for help. Soon, Shannon was rushed to the hospital, where he had to undergo a complicated surgery for his right hand. He almost lost 2 fingers, but eventually recovered fully. After the attack, Shannon rightfully developed a fear of sharks. causing him to stay away from surfing for a while. However, Shannon eventually found a way to overcome his fears. He started a surfing school in Jeffreys Bay and later relocated to Norway so he could teach the national surfing team. What happened to Shannon was quite frightening, but because he returned to surfing, it wasn't the last time he had to face the fearsome predator. In one instance, Shannon had to save a surfer from the jaws of another shark. According to him, it was much more frightening than his own attack, as he had more presence of mind and was more aware of what was happening. Today, Shannon is highly active on social media and has amassed a following. While Shannon considers himself very lucky, he hasn't stopped doing the thing he loves most, surfing. However, we must all remember that Shannon's case was very isolated, and most shark attacks involving great whites end very badly, often in someone's horrifying final affliction.